Hi, I'm Janet. I'm here to talk about coyotes. Hopefully, I'll be able to expand your knowledge, understanding, and maybe even your hearts towards them this evening. But before I begin, a little bit about myself, how I got into this, and what I do. I met my first coyote up on Twin Peaks during an early morning walk with my dog in 2007. This was way back when coyotes were few and sightings were rare, so you can imagine my surprise when a little coyote came bouncingly around a hill, displaying the same fascination for us as we had for her. So we sat down to watch her, and she sat down to watch us. And we watched each other with her repeatedly jumping up and doing these excited little midair twists, just like in this very short video I caught a month later. She was excited and enthusiastic. She was carefully inquisitive. She was aware beyond her own safety and needs, and there was a mutualism beyond what you might expect from a wild animal. So of course I had to find out more, and the more I learned, the more drawn in I became. So that is what I have been doing for the last 12 years, finding out all about our coyotes, always firsthand. I'm a self-taught naturalist. What I know about coyote behavior comes from my own documentation work, which gets me out observing coyotes every day. A typical day for me begins about half an hour before dawn when I head out to a park, sometimes several parks. I'm back by 8, 9, or 10 in the morning, and then I head out again in the late afternoon, early evening, and I'm out until it's dark when I can no longer see and when the camera equipment no longer works. I have used nighttime vision goggles, which are very exciting and lots of fun. And I've also used trap cameras, automatic field cameras, which I don't like very much. But the bulk of my work is during daylight hours and firsthand with a handheld camera. So when I'm out, I try to blend in, I try not to stand out, and I don't intrude into the critical space where my presence would alter any of a coyote's natural behaviors. I'm interested in their natural behaviors and their natural interactions, as you will see in the presentation. My camera is my notebook. It tells me everything I need to know, fortunately, because I don't have time to take field notes in the heat of action, nor do I have time to work with a tripod. So my camera is a very hand-held, hand-manageable contraption with lots of zoom, and I take hundreds of photographs when I'm out. And my day does not end there. When I get back home, I review those photos, and sometimes there are as many as 600 of them, and it's at that time that I put together any stories that popped up during the day, and there's always a story because coyotes are always doing something. Though at times it might take some digging to zero in on exactly what that something is. So then, in addition to my fieldwork, I also get my information out to people in various forms. I have a blog, coyoteyips.com, an Instagram account where I put out photos and little snippets of information. From my work, I have created flyers, videos, and signage in 3 different languages so as to reach as many people as possible. I've written articles for magazines such as Bay Nature. Articles have been written about me, which helps get my information out. And I've put on informational photo exhibits, and there's one going on right now at the Randall Museum in San Francisco. So this is where creativity kicks in. It can be a lot of fun. I do this all on my own. I'm not part of a team. It's not a paid job. It's just a passion, and it's my way of helping the coyote situation. So now let's move on to the coyotes, where I'll be using my own observations and the photos and videos I took during those observations to tell you about them. This presentation comes to you firsthand. What we're going to talk about is some basic coyote characteristics and their population, and that should give you a handle on who they are. And then we'll dive a little deeper into coyote family life and interactions, and finally we'll address pets, people, and concerns. The 2 key takeaway points I'm hoping to leave you with are, number 1, that coyotes have family lives. They're social, they interact all the time. This is basic to who they are, yet few people are tuned into it. And please always walk away from a coyote, not just for your own safety, but for their well-being. Okay, let's move into some coyote characteristics, and let's start with their signature howl. How many of you have heard a coyote howl? I'm sure you'll agree it sounds very eerie at first. It's been described as sounding like a human screaming in agony or cackling witches brewing their potions in the forest. Here goes. Although that sounded like a bunch of coyotes, it was only 2 coyotes. So we're going to be hearing more vocalizations as we move along. What are coyotes anyway? Coyotes are a type of small wild dog. They weigh between 25 and 35 pounds, averaging about 30 pounds in this area. Bulk-wise, that is the size of a beagle, a small dog. Markings can be intense or very subtle and generally include a black-tipped tail, this splotch kind of halfway up towards the base of the tail, a saddle-like or fan-like fur configuration over the upper backs. Then they can be white or lighter underneath, inner legs, chests, chins, necks, and inner ears. And then the outer shell is usually a motley of colors, ranging from generally ruddy reds to tans to grays. Their tails are long and bushy, especially in the winter, and long is a good descriptive word for them. Their 3-inch long, fluffy fur is shed just once a year in the springtime, revealing a very long and lean animal underneath. Note the very long tubular torso, the very long legs, the long snout, long ears, and there again is that long tail. And their coats, especially in the winter against a natural background, serve as camouflage, and I like thinking of these as their invisibility cloaks. There is a slightly different coyote on the East Coast known as the eastern coyote, which is heftier, weighing between 40, 45, sometimes 50 pounds. These eastern coyotes are sometimes referred to as coy wolves because they have 30% wolf genes in their makeup, which accounts for their larger size, and they have 10% dog genes in them, which accounts for their ability to be melanistic or black, which our western coyotes never are. Getting back to our little western coyote, besides their camouflaged invisibility cloaks, they have other traits and capacities which we don't have. So coyotes can run 43 miles per hour, which is faster than the city speed limit, and because they are so light and lithe, they can run up and down very steep inclines swiftly, wearing out a bulkier pursuer such as a wolf. Coyotes can see in the dark, which we can't, because their eyes have more rods than we do. And remember that rods are those low-light black and white receptors. And they have a special reflecting surface at the back of the eye, which amplifies the little light there is. Their large cupped ears catch and amplify sounds, so they can hear a mouse scurry over 100 feet away. And they can hear higher and lower pitches, which are totally inaudible to us. They can almost see with their noses. Odor is very palpable to them. They smell pheromones, which are body chemicals, and more, telling them all sorts of things which we aren't even aware of, such as if an animal is sick. So, for example, this female is sniffing her mate's recent leg injury in order to find out about it. Coyotes can smell what has come and gone long ago, which for us might be a little like time travel into the past. Dogs, too, can do this, of course, but it is a necessary survival skill for coyotes. And coyotes also have amazing GPS systems, such that they can locate each other and places over vast distances without a map. Probably these are based on olfactory cues and their amazing memories. In addition to these superhuman traits, coyotes also have some very human-like characteristics. For instance, each coyote is an individual. You can actually tell them apart by their faces, as you can see in these photos here, and the differences go deeper into their personalities and their different social situations. Personalities are a matter of degree and become very apparent by comparing and contrasting them. Some are more curious and adventuresome, while others are more cautious. Some are more anxious or nervous, and some are more relaxed. Some are more playful and teasing, whereas others are more withdrawn and watchful. So their social situations also vary. Although they all grow up in families, some will be loners for a time and some without territories. Some are parents and some aren't. Each of these different social situations then engenders a different set of behaviors. Coyotes have feelings that are pretty similar to our own. They can be happy, sad, afraid, or angry. They can be jealous, worried, or even vengeful. Here is a happy coyote entertaining herself for over half an hour with a ball she found and somersaults. Coyotes are immensely curious and love to investigate. This is a sign of their intelligence. This guy spent 5 full minutes examining sand and the effect of gravity on that sand as he moved his paw ever so slightly over the surface of that bunker. I like thinking of him as Isaac Newton. Like us, coyotes communicate constantly, not with words, but like us, through eye-to-eye contact, as in this photograph here, through facial expressions, through body language, and they do use their voices. Most importantly, coyotes are family animals. They are social with relationships and they interact constantly. For most, life revolves around their families. Although there are transients or loners, these tend to be temporary or transitional stages. Family is what they seem to aspire to. So those then are some of their superhuman and their very human-like traits. And now let's use family as a departure point for talking about coyote population. Where in the world do coyotes live? They live only here in America. They are native only to the Americas. Australia has its dingoes, India and Asia have their jackals, Africa has its painted dogs, well, we have our very own little native coyotes, and they've expanded their range in the last 200 years from the Midwest, actually the West, and northern Mexico to the entire North American continent, where they inhabit every state of the Union except Hawaii. And they've been able to expand their range because we exterminated their main predator, which is the wolf. We did so by shooting it, killing it outright, but also by removing its habitat, the forests, in order to plant agricultural lands for ourselves. They've even moved into many cities and urban areas, mostly within the last 20 years. Here they live in parks and open spaces, and they do travel through the neighborhoods. How did coyotes get to San Francisco? After many years of absence, coyotes returned to San Francisco in 2002. DNA shows that one of those early coyotes came from Mendocino County, giving rise to the "they trotted over the bridge" theory. No one, though, has ever seen a coyote cross the span of the bridge, and ecologists are skeptical because the population in Marin, on the other side of the bridge, had been very scarce at that time. So I repeatedly heard the story of a trapper bringing them in, which I put on my blog, and sure enough, I was contacted by an intimate associate of that trapper who was a witness to their being dropped off in the Presidio. So this is the story I stick to. Our present population has grown to over 60, maybe 60 to 100 coyotes from those original 8, and some likely have trickled in from the south in keeping with the general trend of coyotes moving into cities throughout the country. I'm doing a DNA study right now to determine the breakdown of their origins. And it turns out that coyotes always lived close to human habitation in this area. They mingled among the Ohlone Indians when the Spaniards first arrived. Coyotes can adapt and have adapted to urban life. For instance, over time, coyotes learn to avoid traffic. Some even look both ways before crossing the street, and some use traffic lights. I have seen them use traffic lights. Another example is they've switched mostly, but not entirely, to nighttime activity in order to avoid people. even though they are not nocturnal, they're diurnal just like you and I are. Be that as it may, daytime sightings are common and normal. They aren't sick or out to get you simply because you have seen one during the day. In many ways, cities may be safer places for coyotes than elsewhere. Here, they have no predators. Guns are usually not allowed. Trapping is now frowned upon more and more. City dwellers are generally more liberal, or they think of themselves as more liberal, accepting, and environmentally concerned, and coyotes are part of that environment. In spite of its being safer in urban areas, cars kill, and so does rat poison by dulling their reaction times. But rat poison also kills directly. And I found this dead coyote in a park, not hit by a car. So I took it up to WildCare for necropsy, and they discovered that it had massive amounts of rat poison riddled throughout its body. There were 4 different brands of rat poison in this little coyote. So WildCare has found rat poison in about 80% of the urban wildlife sent to them. It's up to us as people living here to try to stop the use of rat poison. There's enough food for coyotes in cities. They're known as opportunistic eaters, meaning that they can eat almost anything. Their preferred foods tend to be rodents, such as gophers, squirrels, rats, and voles, but they can also eat larger prey, such as mesopredators, such as skunks and raccoons, including roadkill, amphibians, lizards, insects, fruit, birds, and more. Garbage, it turns out, is only a small portion of their diet, as we have discovered in scat studies. They prefer natural foods. And hey, don't let your cat roam free. Coyotes do nab roaming cats, though I know a number of coyotes who actually flee from cats. So every coyote is different. So there's enough food, but food is never unlimited. To make sure there's enough food for the family living there, families own their own territories with all the resources on that territory, and they keep other coyotes out. This is what their territoriality is about. Keeping other coyotes out, then, limits their population in any given area to that one family, which needs several hundred acres minimum, up to several square miles. Coyotes need about a square mile each, according to Stan Gert at Ohio State. Also limiting the population is the fact that only the 2 alphas in a family reproduce, and this is how it happens. A mother wallops her yearling daughter to either disperse her or to instill fear so that she won't reproduce. Stress can inhibit reproduction. So coyote population is self-regulating. Younger females are referred to as behaviorally sterile. Culling or killing them disrupts this process, and they'll produce more litters and will make up the difference. So population is self-regulated through territoriality, behavior, and limited resources. In fact, killing coyotes is counterproductive on many levels. Vacancies left by kill coyotes are soon filled by transient coyotes. Also, after killing, fewer adults remain to pass on their learned experience to the younger coyotes. Coyotes learn by example and by discipline. Now it will have to be by trial and error. Stable families is what you want in any area. Trappers who have a financial interest in their business lead people to believe they will relocate coyotes. This is not true. In fact, it is illegal in California and many states to relocate coyotes. Or trappers may tell you that the coyotes are euthanized. This also is often not true. They have been sold to penning organizations, which are hunting clubs, where dogs chase them to exhaustion in enclosures they cannot escape from and then maul them apart. This here is one of 2 photographs in this talk, which is not my own. Continuing with their population, pups are born just once a year in the springtime. This distinguishes them from dogs who have a twice-a-year reproductive cycle. Dens are used only for the pupping season. Then, just like bird nests or our own cradles, these are soon outgrown and abandoned to sleep out in the open, usually in hidden places. Here are more dens under tree trunks, under rocks, or they use pre-existing burrows of other animals which they have expanded, or they dig their own dens from scratch. They also have denned under porches. Youngsters grow up and eventually leave. Dispersal is a dangerous time for coyote youngsters who have not yet learned about the dangers of traffic nor the dangers of hostile coyotes. Dispersal also changes their social situation drastically. Whether forced to leave or leaving of their own volition, they now are left without a social situation or family. This is a big change for them. Few people think about this, but coyotes get old. They get hard of hearing, hard of seeing, arthritic and tired. Life becomes more difficult as they age. I see coyotes out less and less as they get older. Sadly, not a whole lot of them live to be a ripe old age. Their natural lifespan in captivity is about 14 to 16 years, but in reality, I am told, in the wild, they live only 3 to 5 years. In urban areas, they do live longer. I know a 12-year-old, as this one in this photograph here, and I know several 10-year-olds. So that covers where they live, their population density, and their life cycle. And now let's move on to coyote family life and interactions. A defining characteristic of coyotes is their family life. They are social. They mate for life. A family consists of a male and a female, and usually pups and or yearlings who eventually and soon leave. Here is a photograph of mom and her 2 9-month-old pups. Here is a dad with 2 yearling pups. And here is a family, a mom and a dad with their almost 2-year-old pup. Mom is the one to the left. You are unlikely to see small pups in these family groups because they are kept hidden until they are larger. Groups of coyotes are always families of related individuals and not like packs of feral dogs, which are unrelated individuals and very often behave like gangsters. On the contrary, coyote families are very orderly and organized. There are hierarchies. There is discipline. Here, one is disciplining another by grabbing his snout. It's a little bit like a hand slap. In fact, even their days are organized. After sleeping during the day, usually in separate locations, their activity generally begins in the evening at their rendezvous, where they meet, greet, and interact. There's lots of excitement at this time of day. It's a little like a party. And then they trek through their territories beyond the parks, where they hunt, patrol, and mark their territories in order to keep other coyotes out. And they continue to socialize. Being in neighborhoods is not wayward behavior. It is perfectly normal. They care for each other through mutual grooming, like removing ticks from each other. And here's more unusual caring behavior, helping a mate in danger or in pain. So remember the leg injury photo you saw earlier. Afterwards, she prods him to move away from the area where dogs might chase him. They cuddle and greet each other with wiggles and squiggles and joyous jumps and body hugs. There's lots of intimacy between them. They tease and horse around all the time. Here, one coyote slipped under another, lifting her on his back where he left her to dangle for a moment. So they can be very funny. They love to play tricks on each other. To the left, Mom teasingly swipes a rat from under her son's nose and runs with it, inspiring a game of chase. Another trick is to spy on and then steal something buried by another coyote and hide it somewhere just for yourself. So they are known as tricksters, and maybe this is the reason why. Poking, pulling, and provocative nipping are all part of their goodwill teasing, though it is not always good-willed. Here is that poking in action in a video. There's lots of excitement when they play. They love a three-way tug of war, and as they run around rambunctiously, they'll leap over each other and even onto each other. Even older adult parents love to play like pups. This is their quality time and reaffirms their bonds. Here, Dad teasingly twists and turns, inciting Mom to react, and here he jokingly and affectionately pinches her leg as they run along together. Her smile shows just how much fun she's having. These are 8-year-old coyote parents with a litter tucked into the bushes about 200 yards away. Hop on Pop, Dad is important in coyote families. Both parents raise the young. This is not so common in the mammal world. Sometimes there's friction in families, just like in our own. Here, two brothers who used to be buddies are now squabbling. They'll disperse soon because this disruptive behavior is not tolerated. Coyotes can act rejected and sad when they are taunted or excluded or shunned. Their feelings can be very intense. The rest of this section is going to be about communication behavior, and of course, communication is another way of interacting. Coyotes communicate constantly through eye contact. They're always aware of each other's moods and intentions. Most of their communication is silent through body language. The flip side of this is facing away purposefully blocks out communication from a taunting sibling. This is something we might do. Communication includes sounds, and I'll show you 3 examples here, beginning with family howls. I've cut out the sirens in this particular video in order to shorten it. Coyotes respond to sirens as here, possibly to express their family unity and their territorial separateness from neighboring coyotes. So this is an evening howling session, and it segues into the rendezvous I told you about. Here there's lots of excitement. A party is about to begin. So next is social vocalizing of a mated pair. I think you'll agree that this sounds very conversational. Possibly they're conveying their locations, how they're doing, and maybe that it's time for the evening meetup. This is the female. That is the male in the background. Lastly, I'll show you distressed howling after being chased by a dog. Coyotes hate to be chased by dogs. She is upset and venting. She's letting the world know how she feels, and this can go on for about half an hour. Please notice that this one is more barky and raspy than the other recordings you've heard. Summarizing then, their sounds range from raspy growls, snarls, hisses, and barks, as in that last recording you heard, which show that they are upset angry, or they use it as a warning, to sing-songy friendly howls, yips, whines, and squeals, as in the family howl session. Use of lips and tongues allow modulations, as in the conversational recording we heard, and their ability to create a variety of sounds often cause a few coyotes to sound like many, as in that introductory recording you heard at the beginning of this talk. In addition, unique howl patterns identify each coyote, and I can distinguish some in the distance. And I've never heard coyotes howl at a kill. They are totally silent as far as I have ever heard. I think it's a misconception that whenever coyotes howl, they have made a kill. So that was their family life, showing how interactive they are. And now let's talk a little bit about pets, people, and concerns. The biggest urban coyote issue is pets. Coyotes and dogs do not like each other, and small pets look like food. 3 triggers often cause a coyote to react to your dog. Proximity offers both coyotes and pets opportunities to interact, usually negatively. Remember that coyotes are opportunists. Let's not offer them these opportunities. Keep pets away, the farther the better. Always walk away from a coyote. Secondly, coyotes hunt, of course. Very small pets are vulnerable. Coyotes don't know who's a pet and who isn't. How would they know this? We need to keep pets at a distance and supervise pets in yards because coyotes can jump a 6-foot fence. Thirdly, their territoriality, which we've talked about, is behind most of their antagonism with dogs, as it is towards other coyotes. Territoriality, again, is ownership. It's to ensure that the scarce food there is just for them, but it also provides a protected place where they can raise their youngsters. How do coyotes deal with their territoriality? How do they achieve it? They message dogs and intruder coyotes to leave them and certain areas alone. And this is how they message the dogs. Through eye contact and facial expressions, through body language, and if that doesn't work, they may up the ante and get more forceful by charging and nipping the haunches or back legs of the dog, cattle dog fashion, to get that dog to leave. This is exactly what the cattle dogs do to the cattle to move them along. It's a communication. However, most dogs react to coyotes by barking, lunging at, or chasing them. You need to prevent these by leashing and walking the other way. Here is more messaging through body language towards a dog. Notice the hairpinned arched back, gaping and hissing here. These are distinctly not dog behaviors. They are specific to coyotes and much more cat-like. Please remember that their aim isn't to maul your dog, but to get your dog to leave. And dogs communicate in their own subtle ways, most of which is below our radar until it's too late. You can minimize negative communication by keeping far away and moving far away from them. Intense coyote communication, even to a leashed dog, can be frightening if you don't know what is going on. And here is an example of a coyote approaching a dog. You'll see messaging and escorting behavior, and you'll hear that raspy barking. The trigger here is proximity. The coyote behavior stops only when the dog moves out of her critical area. This is what the coyote wants. And at that point, the coyote veers off of the dog's path. Notice that the dog owner here has no idea what to do. The dog owner, in fact, told me she thought the coyote wanted to play or was possibly looking for a mate. Now the coyote is following. This is escorting behavior. So I put down the camera and asked the woman to move on. I let her know that's what the coyote wants. And when that happens, notice the coyote veers off the path. So again, many dogs will bark at, lunge at, and try to chase the coyote in this situation. This dog behaved very unusually. Most of the time, you're going to have to walk away dragging your dog after you. In addition to this escorting behavior, a coyote could also follow a dog out of simple curiosity or to monitor it, the same way you might follow a suspect prowling through your neighborhood. Just keep walking away from the coyote without running, dragging your dog if you have to, and keep your eye on that coyote. You may try scaring the coyote off if he comes critically close, but mainly get away from him. That's what the coyote wants. Testing is a little different from messaging and again not so common. Curious coyotes may test or assess how a dog will react to them by approaching with a little bouncy gait and try to interact, touch, or nip the dog's tail. Again, you need to walk away and keep walking away from that coyote. Boop. The good news is that issues are very easy to resolve with minimal effort. Most importantly, practice complete avoidance. No matter how far or near a coyote is, leash your dog the minute you see a coyote and walk away from it without running. Pick up very small dogs as you walk away. Prevent your dog from chasing coyotes. Almost all unleashed dogs chase coyotes. Once a dog has begun to chase, it will be hard to call him back. An alpha coyote could return the favor. Chase back and message the dog with a nip. Please don't let pets roam free, even in your yard. Remember that coyotes can jump a 6-foot fence. Keep food of any kind out of your yard if you don't want coyotes visiting. Adults may scare away a coyote from a yard by banging pots and pans as they walk towards the coyote without getting too close and without cornering the coyote. Younger people should not attempt this. How do people and coyotes get along? Many people don't know about the newly arrived urban coyotes or how to react to them, as that woman with the white dog. This often leads to fears and imagining the worst, which is why we need to educate people about them. Please remember that most coyote encounters are just sightings, but even this is enough to scare some people. Know that coyotes avoid humans naturally. We need to keep it that way by maintaining our distance. Rare scratches or nips to humans are almost always the result of hand feeding, breaking up a dog-coyote altercation, or mingling too closely around coyotes. These are rare, and I will give you statistics in a minute. Small children should be kept away from all wild animals and should be taught to walk away, not run away from a coyote. And this is because of something known as motion reactivity, which is where fast or intense actions incite a coyote, even dogs, to react. This is another reason to keep dogs calm in a coyote area. But also, and this again is rare, coyotes can be incited by bicyclists, by cars, and even by runners. And this almost always happens where there has been feeding going on. Please don't feed a coyote. Lastly, too much love is just as harmful for them as fearing them. In some pockets of San Francisco, the pendulum has swung from fear to too much love for coyotes through feeding, coupled with befriending, trying to get near, attempting to communicate, or even prolonged mutual visual contact. This human behavior over time can attract coyotes and break down existing natural and healthy safety barriers, causing a coyote to hang around listlessly, chase cars, approach, and beg instead of hunt. I think this is where Disney might have failed us. These are not plush stuffed animals. It's best to love their wildness at a distance and maybe even just out of the corner of your eye. In the public realm, the state of California and the city of San Francisco support coexistence through education. They've deemed coyotes not risky. Relocation is illegal and therefore not an option. The media and Nextdoor, which is that social network we all are plugged into, have not been helpful. They have been largely sensationalist, fear-provoking, and lacking a base of knowledge for their reports or postings, often amplifying fears unnecessarily rather than alleviating them. Risks of injury from a coyote are extremely rare, and here are some comparisons. 5,000 people a year get killed crossing a street. Actually, last year it was 6,000. Whereas only 2 deaths of humans from coyotes have been reported in all time. So you're more likely to get killed by a golf ball or a champagne cork. One of the victims was a 2-year-old child whose neighbors had been feeding the coyotes. 1,000 dog bites a day send people to emergency rooms every day of the year, whereas bites and scratches from coyotes to humans amount to 17 a year for all of North America, almost all due to interfering in a dog-coyote encounter or to hand feeding them. Rabies in coyotes is extremely rare. Only 0.2% of all reported rabies cases were coyotes in 2010. They weren't even on the Center for Disease Control's charts of 2017, which is what you see here. This shows that bats accounted for 32% of those cases, raccoons 28%, skunks 21%, and foxes 7%. Know that coyotes mitigate rabies by predation on those species that carry the disease. And here's something interesting I found out in my research, which is that rabies is mainly transmitted within a species and are distributed in distinct geographical regions. So here you'll see raccoons on the East Coast, raccoon rabies cases, skunk rabies cases in the Midwest and California, and then fox rabies cases in Arizona. Pets need to be protected from many dangers. 5.4 million cats are killed each year by cars. 1.2 million dogs are killed each year by cars. Dog bites to other pets is the 3rd largest injury to pets. Potential danger from a coyote is minor. Simple precautions can avert almost all potential problems. The number of dog-dog ego conflicts dwarfs the number of dog-coyote territorial conflicts, but it's almost always the coyote ones that get splashed on the news, no matter how mild they are. A quick word about habituation. Many people believe coyotes should fear humans and flee quickly from them, that the next step is an attack. This is not so. Habituation is a normal development in people-filled cities and doesn't mean these coyotes are aggressive. Nonetheless, it's a good idea to keep your distance, just as you would from a skunk. The term habituation was first used to describe bears as more dangerous if they got used to and lost fear of us. Scientists now know that the opposite is true, that habituated bears tend to ignore humans, whereas bears who have never seen humans are the ones who become reactive. In Africa, to make gorillas less reactive to humans for the tourist trade, people purposefully habituate them and they become less dangerous. On the other hand, food conditioning, indeed, can lead to problems, and they're mostly nuisance problems. Please don't feed coyotes. So we've now heard about some fun coyote characteristics, about their population here in America, about coyote family life and interactions, and lastly, about pets, people, and concerns. And again, the 2 takeaway points I'm hoping to leave you with are that coyotes have family lives. They interact, they're social, there's more going on with them than most people imagine. And please always walk away from a coyote, not simply for your own safety, but also for the well-being of that coyote. Thank you. Now it's your turn to share experiences and ask questions.